The Arctic is melting, and the world's superpowers are racing to claim it. Russia is building military bases on frozen islands. China is calling itself a near-Arctic state and investing billions. America is scrambling to catch up. This is the story of the Arctic, the last frontier, and the next war zone. To understand why the Arctic matters, you need to understand what's changing. The Arctic Ocean has been frozen for millions of years. Thick ice covering the top of the world, impassable, uninhabitable, worthless. But it's melting. Fast. Arctic sea ice has declined 40% since 1980. Summer ice that used to be 12 feet thick is now 3 feet. Scientists predict ice-free Arctic summers by 2040, maybe sooner. This isn't just climate change, this is geopolitical transformation, because when the ice melts, 3 things become possible. First, new shipping routes. Currently, ships traveling from Europe to Asia go through the Suez Canal. 15,000 miles, 30 days at sea. The Arctic route? 7,000 miles, 15 days, 40% shorter. This is the Northern Sea route, along Russia's Arctic coast. Ice blocked for centuries, now opening for months each year. Russia already operates it, escorting cargo ships through melting ice, charging fees, controlling access. China loves this. They call it the Polar Silk Road, part of Belt and Road Initiative. Shorter route to Europe means cheaper trade, billions in savings. But it gives Russia massive leverage. They control the route. They set the rules. They can block anyone. Second, natural resources. The Arctic contains massive untapped reserves. 22% of the world's undiscovered oil and gas, rare earth minerals, gold, diamonds, nickel. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates 90 billion barrels of oil, 1,600 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, 44 billion barrels of natural gas liquids, worth trillions of dollars. For decades, this was inaccessible, too cold, too expensive, technologically impossible. Now it's becoming viable. Ice retreats. Drilling becomes possible. Resources become reachable. Every Arctic nation wants their share. Third, military control. The Arctic is the shortest path between Russia and America, over the North Pole. Ballistic missiles fly this route. Nuclear submarines patrol beneath the ice. During the Cold War, the Arctic was a strategic front. Nuclear deterrence, submarine warfare, early warning systems. Then the Cold War ended. The Arctic became quiet, forgotten. Now tensions are returning, worse than before, because melting ice means new bases, new deployments, new capabilities. The Arctic is militarizing rapidly. So who controls the Arctic? 8 countries have Arctic territory. Russia has the largest Arctic coastline, 53% of the Arctic Ocean shoreline. Massive territory, huge resources. Canada has the second largest Arctic territory. Northwest Passage runs through Canadian waters, strategic location. United States owns Alaska, significant Arctic coastline, major military presence. Norway, Denmark through Greenland, Iceland, Sweden, Finland. Smaller territories but strategic positions. These 8 countries form the Arctic Council. Cooperation Forum, environmental protection, scientific research. It worked for decades. Low tensions, mutual cooperation. Then Russia invaded Ukraine. Everything changed. February 2022. Russia invades Ukraine. Western nations impose sanctions. Cooperation collapses. Arctic Council suspends Russia. Joint projects halt. Scientific collaboration ends. The cooperative Arctic is over. And Russia doesn't care, because they're already winning the Arctic race. Let's talk about what Russia is doing. Russia has been preparing for Arctic dominance for 20 years. Massive investment, strategic focus, military buildup. They've built 40 Arctic military bases, some on remote frozen islands where no one has lived for decades. Airfields, naval bases, radar stations, missile installations. They've deployed advanced weapons, hypersonic missiles, nuclear-capable bombers, state-of-the-art submarines. They've built the world's only nuclear-powered icebreaker fleet, 40 icebreakers total, more than all other countries combined. America has 2 operational icebreakers. 2. Russia has 40. Icebreakers control Arctic access. Without them, you can't operate. Russia dominates. They've established Northern Fleet Joint Strategic Command, dedicated Arctic military force, 60,000 troops, specialized for Arctic warfare. They conduct massive Arctic military exercises annually, practicing amphibious landings on frozen coasts, testing equipment in extreme cold, training for Arctic combat, and they're drilling. Massive oil and gas projects, Yamal Peninsula, dozens of offshore platforms, exporting Arctic resources. Russia sees the Arctic as their future, their economic lifeline, their strategic advantage. President Putin has made it a priority. National security strategy explicitly names Arctic control as vital interest. So what is China doing in the Arctic? China has no Arctic territory. They're thousands of miles away. But they declared themselves a near-Arctic state. Near-Arctic. They invented this term. No one else uses it. But China insists. Why? Because they want access to shipping routes, to resources, to influence. China published an Arctic policy white paper in 2018, announcing Polar Silk Road, massive investment plan. They're investing heavily in Arctic infrastructure, funding ports, building icebreakers, financing mining projects. In Greenland, China tried to buy abandoned military bases. Denmark blocked it. Then China offered to build airports. Denmark blocked that too, but China keeps trying. In Iceland, China bought land near strategic locations, built research stations, established presence. In Russia, China is a major investor. Joint Arctic projects, oil and gas development, infrastructure financing. China doesn't have military bases in the Arctic yet, but they're positioning for future access. Their strategy is economic penetration. Invest heavily, gain leverage, eventually translate economic power into strategic influence. And what about America? America is behind, dramatically behind. They didn't take Arctic seriously for decades. After the Cold War, Arctic investment dropped, bases closed, focus shifted elsewhere. Now they're playing catch-up and struggling. America has only 2 operational icebreakers. One is 46 years old, constantly breaking down. The other is aging, both inadequate. Congress approved funding for new icebreakers, but they won't be ready until the 2030s, maybe later. Shipbuilding delays are common. America has limited Arctic bases, mostly in Alaska, nowhere near Russia's 40 bases. American Arctic military exercises are small, infrequent, under-resourced. The Navy has published Arctic strategy documents. The Coast Guard wants more funding, but budgets are limited. Priorities are elsewhere: Middle East, Asia-Pacific, Europe. America is trying to wake up, but they're years behind Russia, maybe a decade. Canada faces similar problems: massive Arctic territory, but limited resources to control it. They have aging icebreakers, inadequate military presence, vast territory with minimal surveillance. The Northwest Passage runs through Canadian waters. Canada claims it as internal waters. America disputes this, calls it international strait. This creates tension, even between allies. Who controls Arctic passages? National sovereignty or international access? NATO is trying to respond collectively. Increased Arctic exercises, enhanced cooperation, shared resources. But Russia is no longer NATO's partner. They're the adversary, and they're already established. So what happens next? 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, frozen cooperation, 30% probability. Climate change slows. Arctic development remains difficult. Economic benefits don't materialize as expected. Military tensions stay manageable. No major confrontations. Low-level competition continues, but no conflict. International law prevails. United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea governs disputes. Countries accept legal frameworks. This is the optimistic scenario. Cooperation returns eventually. Arctic remains relatively peaceful. Low probability, given current tensions and Russia's aggression. Scenario 2, resource competition. 50% probability, most likely outcome. Arctic development accelerates. Resources become accessible. Shipping routes open regularly. Countries compete aggressively but avoid direct conflict. Economic competition, territorial disputes, legal battles, but not war. Russia dominates the eastern Arctic, their coastline, their resources, their routes. NATO countries control western Arctic, Greenland, Canadian passages, Alaska approaches. China gains economic access through Russian partnership, invests heavily, gains influence, but no military presence. Regional tensions remain high. Occasional incidents, close military encounters, shows of force, but managed carefully. Arctic becomes like South China Sea, contested, tense, competitive, but not openly hostile. Scenario 3, Arctic conflict, 20% probability. Military confrontation happens, maybe over territorial dispute, overlapping claims, resource access, shipping route control. Maybe Russia closes northern sea route to western ships. NATO responds. Tensions escalate. Maybe Chinese warships enter Arctic waters. America objects. Standoff occurs. Maybe accident, military aircraft collision, ships colliding in narrow passages, incident spirals, limited conflict, naval skirmishes, air confrontations, cyber attacks, not full war, but military action. This would be catastrophic. Two nuclear powers fighting in remote frozen waters. High risk of escalation, low probability, but not impossible. Tensions are high, misunderstandings happen. Arctic is unforgiving environment. So where does this leave us? The Arctic is transforming from frozen wasteland to strategic prize. Climate change is creating geopolitical opportunity. Russia is winning. They prepared. They invested. They're established. China is positioning. They're patient. They're strategic. They're building long-term influence. America is behind. They're trying to catch up, but they're late. The next decades will determine Arctic control. Who dominates shipping routes? Who extracts resources? Who projects military power? This affects everyone. Arctic shipping changes global trade. Arctic resources affect energy markets. Arctic military balance affects nuclear deterrence. The Arctic is the last great territorial competition. Like Africa in the 1800s, scramble for territory, race for resources, competition for control. But this scramble involves nuclear superpowers, advanced militaries, sophisticated weapons. In an extremely harsh environment, the stakes couldn't be higher. Right now, Russian military bases dot frozen islands. Chinese research stations appear on Arctic coasts. American icebreakers struggle to patrol vast distances. The ice is melting, the race is accelerating, the Arctic is opening, and the world's superpowers are rushing in. This is the Arctic, the frozen frontier, the resource treasure, the military flashpoint, the last place on Earth with unclear borders, uncertain ownership, untapped wealth, and it's becoming the next battleground. The question isn't if powers will compete for Arctic control. They already are. The question is whether that competition stays peaceful or becomes the next great conflict. The ice is melting, the clock is ticking, and the Arctic race has begun.